Hello, welcome to News 24. My name is T.D. Madia. This is part of our ruling coverage. We were with you yesterday. We're with you again today on Thursday, bringing you the election results. We've gone beyond voting. We're now looking at the numbers, and I must tell you, there's a vindicate of sorts that's taking place on those boards. It's very interesting, and we're going to delve into that at the moment. I'm now joined by Wouter Wessels, Head of Elections and Strategy at the Freedom Front. Also an unemployed former MP, waiting to see if he's going to go back to Parliament. Wouter, thank you so much for joining us. Before I even chat to you, I want to look at the numbers. Let's zoom into the screen that's behind us on the floor here at the IEC. Let's look at what I'm talking about. When I say to you there's a wonder kid that has developed in these elections, this is what I mean. So, from the start, I arrived, not so early, but I arrived, and the first thing I did was I went to the board, and I was like, look at Freedom Front Plus in the Northwest. Oh my gosh, look at it in Gauteng. Look at it in Mpumalanga. I don't even think Mpumalanga was a factor. Look at it in the Free State. Fascinating stuff where it feels like out of the blue. We've heard the analyst saying, the DA will shed voters, but I didn't see it being this. I didn't see you suddenly being placed at fourth place, and yet here we are. How do you do it?
There was surveys and polls, and I think an Ipsos poll placed us on fourth place, tied with the IFP. Let me first say that it is early days. A lot can still happen. So we are sure that we did grow. We can see there is a growth path. In the provinces that you mentioned, we did much better. There's, for instance, the Northern Cape.
Sure.
We are already more than double the amount of votes that we got in 2014. So there we increased our support. And an interesting statistic is that in 2014, we only managed to win 5 voting districts. At the moment, and there's still 80% of the votes to be counted,
sure,
we stand on 66 voting districts.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
So that's a huge increase, yeah.
So what is the mood like within the party also? I mean, you've done exceptionally well already. You might call it early days, but all indications are you've done exceptionally well.
It all depends now on the voter turnout and what that votes will actually translate into seats, because that's how the system works. So it's very early to predict how many seats we'll get, if we'll get more legislature seats in provincial legislatures. Even in the Northern Cape, it can still happen that we don't get a full seat in the legislature, even though we doubled our number of votes. But we are confident in those provinces that we will get representation. It looks like it. There's predictions by some experts here and some clever people saying that we'll end up on about 3.2%. Some say a little bit more. And that will be quite good. That means about 18 members of parliament, so that's quite good. And you asked how did we manage to do it?
Yeah.
I think we appealed to the normal South African who's fed up with a dispensation where the poor only gets poorer, where the middle class worker is overtaxed, and where there's no real solutions to the problems, where there's election promises but no actual policy. And I think especially our economic policy appealed to a lot of voters. And that is where we differentiated ourselves from other parties, where we actually provide solutions to create job opportunities and to actually create equal opportunities for all South Africans and a better future for all South Africans.
But part of the South African story, Wouter, is the complexity of the injustices of the past. And there's always been an argument around what does one do to try and bridge the gap. Affirmative action comes into play. Now, Freedom Front Plus has very strong views on what affirmative action represents and whether or not it's a good thing for the country. So when you're speaking about this great economic offering that the Freedom Front Plus put forward, and take this into consideration with the views that the FF Plus has over the issue of affirmative action, many then have a challenge with understanding your perspective as you're putting it forward now. What do you say to those people where they say, but FF Plus doesn't understand why this country needs something like affirmative action?
If you read our manifesto, we acknowledge the injustices of the past.
Sure.
And we say it should be addressed. But affirmative action has been in place for 25 years.
Yeah.
Black economic empowerment has been in place for 25 years. Has it really addressed poverty? of the masses of disadvantaged people in South Africa. And when we talk about the majority of black people, black economic empowerment has only succeeded to enrich an elite, a selected elite. If we say we change our empowerment model to say the proxy for empowerment is rather socio-economic circumstances, thus saying if you are poor, you are empowered. If you add a lack of access to quality education, you are empowered. But now you have someone that's only judged on the skin color, on his skin color, and that's archaic. And we're not moving past the past, and actually to a future where we move away from racial classification and actually addressing the plight of the poor and the actual disadvantaged.
I'm going to skip back into the question around Parliament as well. Obviously, having a higher number in Parliament almost means that your voice is strengthened, and also you could maybe play a different role in Parliament. I know it's very early days, you and I agree on that, but have there been any thoughts about what the FF Plus plans to do in the 6th administration with this increased number, this stronger voice?
Well, what we will take a strong stance on our policies in Parliament. We will provide stronger opposition. It's very, very difficult for a party with only 4 members to actually play an opposition role.
You don't even get enough time to argue when
exactly.
When
but I think if you go and look at our record, we have played an important opposition role. But being stronger, and if we are stronger, we will be able to play it so much better. We'll be able to do so much more for the people that voted for us and be their voice in Parliament and be their voice in provincial legislatures. It's still early days. It doesn't look as if there's going to be a coalition necessarily in certain provinces, although the Northern Cape might be a touch and go. And there we can carry in our policies in a coalition. We'll form, and our policy is that we'll form coalition governments to keep the ANC out of power, because the ANC has proven that they cannot govern South Africa to the benefit of all South Africans.
What's the ideal coalition arrangement for FF Plus? You know, the DA has made no secret that ideally for them, there must be the stronger partner that holds the coalition together. What potential does FF Plus then to be in that kind of role where you are the strongest party and then you're responsible for holding many different views together to make sure that you govern really well and make sure you then deliver services to people?
I think what we've proven in the municipalities where we are coalition partners, for instance in Hessequa, where we hold the balance, the number of seats of the ANC and the number of seats of the DA is exactly the same, and we are the balance between them, and we can decide and we can hold them accountable. Hold the DA in government, but hold them accountable to the people and also serve the broader electorate by doing that. So we will form coalitions on the basis of saying this is what we demand in terms of bettering the livelihoods of our electorate and carrying in certain of our policies. That would be the negotiation. The Freedom Front Plus does not hold the view that we'll negotiate with regards to positions. That is where coalitions fail. But then there is another form of coalition government which is currently in Tshwane and Johannesburg, where it's actually a minority government with the EFF deciding on a case-to-case basis. And we'll consider that in certain cases as well. And then you can also hold them accountable. Then you're not part of government, but the government needs you to do anything, to approve a budget and to go forward, and then you can put certain demands and actually change to the better. Yeah.
You at home can participate in this interview. We are having a Q&A session. You can join us on social media and put questions to Wouter Wessels. But before I go to your questions, just keep posting, I'll come back to them. But before I do, I want to also talk about this idea and what analysis has been saying about the DA shedding members to FF Plus. The DA views these as the conservative members of the DA, and some have said to me within the DA that actually these are racist people pretending to have been liberals all along. It's a good thing, it's a great strategy that they must actually go and then go deal with being in the Freedom Front Plus and see what it's like. Obviously, those DA members who make these comments obviously pitch you already as a racist political party and say, in fact, those who left will actually regret the decision at a later stage. What is your reaction to comments like that coming from a party that you are in a partnership with, in particular municipalities?
The DA had a very big campaign against us. If you go and look at, they spent millions of rands against the Freedom Front Plus, saying don't vote for the Freedom Front Plus because they are too small. It was very ironic because I wouldn't spend a lot of money on a small party. I would rather spend that money to fight the ANC,
Sure.
who's the enemy. But okay, let's leave it at that. Fact of the matter is, analysts and independent analysts have said in this election campaign that the DA's biggest problem is that they are race obsessed. And they prove it by those type of comments. They always go to race. That's why Musi Maimane, the leader of the DA, will always choose racism as the ultimate and the be-all and end-all. Everything is not racism, and everything does not stop and begin with race. We are people, we are South Africans, we can build a better future together if we stop focusing on that and we actually unite in our diversity. I think it's misconceptions, and we've succeeded to, since 2013, actually step by step get rid of those type of misconceptions and position ourselves as a party that is not a conservative racist party, but is a party of solutions, of policy, and people who associate with that policy forms part of the party. It's not only conservative or conservative racist people. I think that's very short-sighted that joined the Freedom Front Plus out of the DA. There's non-white members as well. There's wards that the DA won in 2016, where we now have a lot of support because they said the DA failed them. And it's not white wards if we want to racially classify everything in South Africa. But so we must start looking at the future, and the DA should be careful. They told voters that they should not vote for a small party. They campaigned it in that fashion. And then at the same time they tell people, but we'll need to form coalitions. They must decide. And it's bullying to say to a voter, you should not vote for that party. Or these people that are not choosing me anymore, they're racist. That's very short-sighted, and we must really have debate policy stances and stop debating these nonsense that the DA made their campaign about. They attacked us on committee attendance, they attacked us on things of the past. Rather debate us on policy and your policies and tell us where are we wrong and where are you right, and where do we find common ground to create a better South Africa. That's what politics should be about, not these short-sighted slurring of racist remarks and committee attendance and all kinds of nonsense. Yeah.
That's very interesting, because some would agree with you saying we need to diversify as a country and unite in that diversity, while others will actually agree with the DA and say, actually, we are a race-obsessed country, and that is what it is. Before I go to the tweets, go to your tweets, I also want to know, then, what do you do when they've campaigned against you? I mean, the EFF feels very strongly about the way the DA has carried its own campaign, but what does the FF Plus then do when it's time to negotiate for coalitions in some of those provinces, having seen and dealt with the DA that's thrown everything, including the kitchen sink your way, and trying to decampaign you? Then what do you do when they come to say, hey, let's sit and chat about the way forward? Do you then debate and negotiate a coalition from an aggressive point of view, where you've been insulted and hurt? Or how do you approach it?
I think we are a mature party, and we're not childish and short-sighted to throw our toys out because they now criticize us. What is in the best interest of the electorate? What is in the best interest of the community? If we now just walk out of every coalition agreement that we have with the DA, the ANC will take over, and they've, as I've said, proven that they can't govern municipalities and provinces. So we will form coalitions not based on short-sightedness, but based on what is in the best interest of the communities out there.
All right, we're now going to go to those tweets that I've been talking about. At Rikesh I Am says, FF Plus and Good seem to have made inroads But it seems that the DA hasn't been affected too much. So where did the voters come from? Is it from COPE? It seems like they're one of the losers. Yes, the COPE is one of the losers. Where do they come from, these big numbers that we're seeing?
Well, in the campaigning, we saw and we heard a lot of people telling us they voted DA previously and they'll now vote for us. This time we'll vote Freedom Front Plus. We heard that a lot. So there must be votes that came from the DA. But there's also a lot of people that did not vote previously or haven't voted for a long time who said your call to action spoke to us. We agree that we can't just sit passively and look at the political arena. We should get involved, we should vote informed, and we vote for you to protect our interests. So we think there's also votes that came from that side, non-voters that did come to us. And there may be other smaller parties as well, maybe other parties, we're not exactly sure. But through our campaign research and through campaigning, it did seem as though a big chunk did come from the DA. If we also analyze the results from certain polling stations, you'll see that our increase is in a lot of urban polling stations exactly the decrease of the DA. So it must come from the DA. The DA might have made inroads to actually collect votes maybe from COPE, maybe from the EFF to a certain extent, maybe from the ANC, and then there's new electorates as well,
yes.
Young people that registered for the first time. So I think that's a balance of a different number of factors.
Makes sense to me. At the Real DK Lady is asking, what was your campaign strategy? I think you're the best person suited to answer this, and saying what exactly were the promises you made to voters, what made them win the DA voters over?
Okay, I think we didn't make promises. In 2014, the ANC promised 6 million job opportunities. The DA criticized them, and we all criticized them because it was unrealistic within the economic framework. The DA now in this election campaign promised a job in every household.
Yes, it did.
In Gauteng, there's 14 million households. No government can just create 14 million households. You won't even do that in 5 years' time. So I think voters realized, and when we spoke on the campaign trail to people, they're tired of empty promises of better service delivery, and then a week, 2 weeks before the election, then they get a title deed or they get better infrastructure or whatever. What we said is our policy and our manifesto offers solutions. We've proven that we are a watchdog, that we can play an opposition role. We've proven that we can play a role in a coalition government, that we can govern in such a form. And we've proven that, and analysts and so forth have felt that our economic policies, for instance, actually provide solutions to the problems of South Africa and will create a conducive environment for the free market and for the private sector to create jobs, to create economic opportunities and so forth. So I think that is how we won voters over. And our theme was there is hope. And I think that spoke to the electorate up there as well.
Absolutely spoke to those numbers over there. That's why I know. The last question we have for you is from Ed Henry Foster. He says, voters told him afterwards that affirmative action and BEE played the biggest role in them actually voting for Freedom Front. What are your thoughts on that? I know we touched on it earlier, but what are your thoughts?
I really do think so. I think South Africans have become aware of the fact that those type of policies does not work, that it has failed, that it only creates an elite, as I've said, that it does not actually empower the majority, and that it reduces a person to only a skin color. And the problem is that we don't appoint on merit, but we appoint on skin color, on a quota. The Springbok captain said, I don't want to be a quota. I want to be chosen as Springbok captain because I'm the best. And what we do is we actually create an inferiority complex because of you are in this job because of affirmative action, which is not necessarily the case. And that reduces someone to a race, and then it creates new imbalances as well. So I think there is a lot of people that voted for us because of that stance and because of the fact that we don't say leave empowerment completely. We say use socioeconomic circumstances as proxy, and we say empowerment should actually be, the emphasis of empowerment is growth and development. If you don't grow the economy, you won't actually, none of these type of policies will work. A dispensation of redistribution won't succeed because you can't create wealth by dividing wealth. You have to increase the size of the cake that represents South Africa's economy, and people felt that is important. Those type of things will provide a better future for South Africa. That's why they voted for us. Yeah.
All right, and we'll keep watching those numbers. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's actually been an interesting conversation. That's Wouter Wessels, Head of Elections and Strategy at Freedom Front Plus, and an MP. Well, hoping to return as an MP.
Unemployed.
An unemployed MP hoping to return. Now, we'll be here the whole day, bringing you updates throughout the day, different political parties, looking at the numbers, analyzing what the numbers mean for South Africa's future. But for now, I just want you to pay attention to this video that's going to come up very quickly. It was a conversation with Pieter, Groenewald, also from the Freedom Front Plus, in studio a few days ago, also sharing his thoughts. But this time it was in the lead up to the elections, and obviously they've done really well. For News 24, my name is Tsidi Madia.
Issue that you raised now, which I suppose you've been hearing on the campaign trail, and which is a very big issue for your target market in the voters market, is affirmative action. Issue that you raised now, which I suppose you've been hearing on the campaign trail, and which is a very big issue for your target market in the voters market, is affirmative action. How is, in your mind, in your party's position, how has affirmative action been implemented over the last 25 years? Where has it gone wrong? And how would you reform that? Do you think it's still necessary to have affirmative action?
No, we're on record to say that we can abolish it in total. And let me give some examples. For instance, where it went wrong is that the government party has misused affirmative action to do cadre deployment. They did not look at whether, when it comes to affirmative action, whether the person was qualified and able to do the job. They just did people who was politically correctly connected in certain manager positions. And that is where it completely went wrong. That means that affirmative action actually ensured that you had incompetent people. And let's take an example. Let's take Eskom. I've asked in Parliament the question, and the minister said, and the answer was that since from 1994 to 2005, 10,500 white engineers left the service of Eskom. It was expertise. Now, by that, I don't say that there are black engineers now who does not have the expertise. Of course they have. But it was a mass exit of expertise that left Eskom. And we are paying the price. I had a situation where a black engineer said to me, you know, I'm an engineer working with Eskom. My manager, he hasn't got the qualifications, but he was politically correctly connected. And when I told him to do certain things, he said, don't you tell me what to do. And therefore, if you look at the research at the moment, at the last couple of years, more black professionals are leaving South Africa. Why? Not only, but a major role played by affirmative action.
Will this constitutional amendment go through to enable expropriation without compensation? How do you see that process evolving?
Depending on what is going to happen after the 8th May election, they do need a 2/3 majority to amend the constitution. There's no doubt about that. And if they get partners, the ANC on its own won't get a 2/3 majority, but if they get partners to ensure and support them, then there's no doubt in my mind that they will amend Section 25 of the Constitution. People are sometimes in a state of denial. They think it cannot happen. I am convinced that if they are in a position to do it, they will do it.
You're with News 24. I'm Jerusha Sukhthio-Rath, the head of video at News 24, and I'm joined in studio by our social media editor, Kelly Anderson. Kelly, I wouldn't have thought it, but when we woke up at some ungodly hour this morning, the big news was the Freedom Front Plus.
Yes, the Freedom Front Plus has surprisingly managed to dominate social media conversation this morning. I think people are absolutely shocked. I think they're in 4th place, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, to put it in context, as of about 9 o'clock this morning, they were at 108,000 votes. It's extraordinary. The DA at the same point are just about 870,000. It gives you an idea that the Freedom Front Plus may have taken some of those votes from the DA.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously early and a lot of votes still need to come in, but at the moment, yeah, I mean, the sentiment on Twitter is shock. A lot of people are saying, who are these people? We've never heard of them before. We didn't see their campaigns. We haven't read the manifestos. But yeah, I mean, I can go through a couple of tweets from people. We've got someone saying, the FF Plus is on the rise, and that should tell you what's up in South Africa. Their slogan was fight back, and you can see they heeded the call.
When we spoke to FF Plus leader Pieter Groenewald in our studio in Joburg, he was very clear that the fight back meant fight back at the ballots, and clearly supporters did.
They did, yeah. Here's someone saying, I can't even hate on the FF Plus. They got their people to the polls. People voted for a party whose policies they believe. They didn't just toy on Twitter and sleep in on election day.
Harsh but fair.
Yeah, harsh but fair. I mean, here's someone saying, I've never even heard of them. This doesn't make sense, with a nice picture of Beyonce looking shocked there. And someone saying, FF Plus, silent but deadly, which I think, yeah, I mean, they're obviously not wildly active on social media. I mean, they do have some of their MPs and their leaders on Twitter, but they're not obviously as vocal as the EFF or some members of the ANC. So I think on social media it's a bit of a shock because they're not used to kind of seeing this party take such a prominent stand in the election. So yeah, it's been really interesting. We're obviously going to keep monitoring it, but people are shocked, but I think people are also a little bit impressed. Yeah. It's been very interesting.
In fact, when Groenewald was in our studio, one of the questions our readers in the live Q&A asked was, why haven't we seen you polling in, or at least campaigning in some of the township areas and rural areas? And his response was, well, actually they didn't have budget. So if we take that at face value, it seems for a low budget campaign, they're certainly gaining the social media traction of some of the higher budget campaigns too.
Yeah. I mean, probably unexpected, but effective nonetheless. But yeah, if we just kind of look at the general sentiment on Twitter this morning, it's very early. I feel like I've been awake for a few days.
We have.
But it's kind of a mix of elation or shock or fear. It really just depends on which party you subscribe to. The ANC have got their hashtag ANC leads trending. We're seeing ANC supporters celebrating their lead at the moment. And you can pop on the ANC. We'll obviously see a lot of the members of the ANC tweeting. Yeah, they're celebrating. And the EFF is not taking kindly to it. The EFF, well, people are basically saying to the EFF, look guys, it seems like you were very vocal on Twitter for most of this election, but it looks like elections can't actually be won on social media, which is a conversation I had with Pieter last night about whether a campaign can be won on social media, because the EFF does take up so much of the social media conversation, but at the end of the day, is that effective to win an election? And we've got a tweet here saying, there's been a lot of people saying this election's been rigged, but I think we get that kind of conversation happening every election.
So a lot of noise on social media around that.
Yeah, so this person's saying there's nothing rigged here. You spend too much time on Twitter and think it's an accurate reflection of South Africa. Winning Twitter polls has never meant anything. And I think that is an important point to consider. And I think we as the media often take our lead from Twitter often, which perhaps we shouldn't do, because it is true, Twitter doesn't reflect the whole of South Africa. Not everyone in rural South Africa is on Twitter. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's possible people aren't voting the way they're tweeting either.
No, for sure. And obviously all the election results aren't out yet, and this is, I think, only 25% of them have been counted. Yeah. So we can't actually say yet, but from what we can see so far, it's quite interesting. And this person's saying, let this be a lesson. Social media does not determine the number of votes.
Oh, true.
But we actually got an interesting video from Julius Malema last night. He tweeted out and put on Instagram this video of a person in ANC regalia filming himself in the election booth, filming his jacket with the ANC logo, and then putting his mark next to EFF. I think we actually have that video if you want to play it.
Let's have a look now. Well, that's quite something.
Yeah, I don't know if that's legal.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
I don't think you're allowed to film yourself in the voting booth, but I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting thing for him to post, basically saying that trust no one, I guess. But yeah, we're going to just kind of monitor the situation as the day goes on, and we will update you a bit later about the social trends as things unfold. And we've also just received a video of allegedly EFF supporters kind of bullying an older ANC voter, and we will have that story up on News 24 shortly. We're just figuring out what's happening there.
And verifying it.
And verifying it. But Julius Malema did respond saying that they were investigating it as well, so we will get that video up and give you the full story as soon as possible.
Great. Can you remind us of that hashtag and how our viewers at home can get in contact with us if they've got opinions to share?
Yes, so you can tweet us at News24, you can follow us on Instagram at News24, we are on Facebook, just News24. You can use the hashtag #SAElections2019, and we are also hopping on the elections results hashtag from now. So contact us that way. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to put some of your opinions and thoughts into our live blog that we're running at the moment. Otherwise, I will speak to you later.
That's News24 social media editor Kelly Anderson. Stay with us. We're going to be live streaming throughout the day. And remember to use all our social media channels to get in touch with us. We'll see you later.